Were you aware that back in 2003, Disney released a Silent Hill video game known as Piglet's Big Game? That's right, if you're looking for a good slice of Disney survival horror, then look no further than Piglet's Big Game. So over the past week, this video game from 2003 has been absolutely blowing up. On November 8th, a tweet was posted by Jackson Lloyd saying, "This is making me lose my fucking mind," posting a small snippet of Foreboding 1, part of the soundtrack of Piglet's Big Game. Now this obviously caught like wildfire because what the fuck? This tweet ended up generating 11.6 million views along with 81,000 likes. Jackson attached another tweet to that tweet saying, "What the fuck happens in Piglet's game?" attaching a snippet of Foreboding 4, which is even worse than Foreboding 1. And what's even funnier about this is it was pointed out by Georgie that it would seem as if the composer of the recent Silent Hill 2 remake actually sampled Foreboding 1 in the game. We don't know this for sure, but they sound so similar. So naturally this piques people's curiosity, leading them to actually check the game out to find out some context behind why a game that is a Disney game has a soundtrack like this. This is when xFelgium posted this tweet saying, "Hey guys, what the f happens in this game with this clip attached?" Is this a Resident Evil or Silent Hill game we were never told about? What is this? This tweet went absolutely insane, going beyond the original tweet that prompted this whole entire meme to begin with, generating 18 million views and 159,000 likes. Fun fact, this tweet generated more engagement than Blizzard's announcement of Overwatch Classic. It's pretty crazy to think that a game from 2003 that doesn't really have any kind of sub-communities, especially looking in the speed running side of things, is generating the most traction it's probably ever generated in its entire life cycle. Because I'm sure for a lot of people, this is a game that you may have seen back in the day but never played, like myself, or perhaps played a little bit of but never continued with it. I would say there's only a very small handful of people that have Piglet's Big Game as a core memory, as a piece of nostalgia pudding. So because this game has been exploding over the past week, it's actually prompted people to increase the listing prices of Piglet's Big Game over on eBay. This is now sitting at anywhere from $200 to $300 US for most of the listings that can be found, with pretty much all of them dubbing this game as a new rare gem. You've got to love how some of these listings also have Silent Hill in them as well. That's great. Everyone's catching on to the meme. This is kind of the unfortunate side of a game blowing up, is that for any collectors out there, even though this game isn't good, and yes, I can now say that from a first-hand account, it's not really that great, but it's just simply because of the traction this game has been generating over the past week, where suddenly everyone wants a taste of Piglet's Big Game. It means that sellers will start getting their money nuts out and scalping the living out of the video game. I am telling you right now, it is not worth $300-400. Hell, some people have it for $2,000 here! So for the sake of video game science and to satisfy my own curiosity, I decided to sit down and go through the entirety of Piglet's Big Game to check out what the fuss is all about. Why is the survival horror vibe so strong for a licensed Disney game I need to know. Developed by the French-based studio in 2003, Doki Denki, whose history only really consists of licensed-based Disney games. This game was released to coincide with the movie counterpart, Piglet's Big Movie, which, by the way, this movie bangs. While the game isn't a tie-in or follows the exact same narrative like a lot of the movie-based video games at the time, the game's story is loosely based on the events of the movie. If you didn't know, this game revolves around Piglet. You know, because it's Piglet's big game. It's not Eeyore's big. It's not Tigger's big game. It's not it's Piglet. It's a Piglet game. The story goes a little something like this. Well-known theory that the characters of the 100 Acre Wood represent specific disorders, with Piglet representing anxiety. With his constant overthinking, his continual stuttering, as well as a huge lack in self-esteem, which is kind of the theme of this entire game, Piglet wants to set out on a mission to overcome his fears. He witnesses a shadow creature one day and runs to Christopher Robin. Christopher Robin basically tells him,
"What's wrong with you, bro? What the heck? You tripping, bro? You tripping!"
You need to face your fears.
Wait a minute, wait, face your fears? I've heard that somewhere before. Piglet leaves the 100 Acre Wood, finds a telescope on the hill that somehow can peer into the dreams of his friends, and as a means of facing his fears, he helps his friends solve their issues within their dreams. Yeah, this is pretty much Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance before Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance. We may as well call this Piglet's Big Dream Drop Distance. Or you could go with Piglet's Big Silent Hill. Or Piglet's Big Resident Evil. You know, take your pick, whatever you fancy. So each level throughout the game is a dream from one of the characters. So this very odd horror theme is probably starting to make a little bit of sense as the game revolves around dreams, but then you have to ask yourself, what the f is going on in the heads of some of these characters? I mean, I hate to say it, but this does make sense for Eeyore. Something tragic has happened to this guy. Now this is a 3D adventure game, so we're tasked with exploring these levels to find key items in order to progress to the next step, so that we can help our friends out with any issue they're currently facing within their head. Like Pooh, for instance, is stuck in a puddle of caramel, and the only way to get him out of this sticky situation is with a stick. Nice.
I've discovered that caramel is quite good for eating, but not so good for, standing in.
Kids, you learn life lessons with Piglet's Big Game. The game's runtime is about 4 to 5 hours, and I was thinking to myself during that time, yeah, something like Roblox is looking pretty good right now. Kids these days would play this and laugh at us thinking, this is the type of shit you guys were offered when you were children? Although, to be fair, kids are offered games like Bed Lying Simulator 2020 nowadays, so, you know, I know what one I would rather. It's as basic comes, though I've never really enjoyed adventure games, any of the point-and-click or 3D styled ones, and after all, this is a game aimed at children. Or at least I think it is? I don't know, parts of the game make me question that. Now the biggest problem I had with this game is that Piglet is so fucking slow. It's like he's got cement in his pockets or something. I don't know. I don't even know if he's got fucking pockets. And because this game has you walking from area to interact with something and then collect an item and then walk back to an area you've already been to, but then you've got to go all the way to the other side of the level, so you've got to transition through several other areas and then backtrack again. Oh my god, it's so painful. Telling you right now, Roblox is looking pretty good. However, because I was playing on a PlayStation 2 emulator, it meant that I could activate Turbo Mode. This is the only way to play Piglet's Big Game, by the way. It's how I played the majority of the game, and I can tell you right now, it led to some comedy gold.
No bother.
What the fuck?
It's rather...
Throughout each stage, we can smack things to receive
Double chunk chocolate cookie!
This is the game's collectible, and they can be used to purchase new scary faces for Piglet. Think of these as your combat abilities, because yeah, that's basically what they are. Yeah, there are enemies in the game, though there's no Devil May Cry combat system, but rather just button presses. We defeat enemies by having a stroke. You'll have to successfully complete a number of button presses before the enemy reaches Piglet. The difficulty of these minigame encounters does increase as you go through the levels. There'll be new enemies that'll put a sort of twist on some of the button prompts, but overall this is the only other thing you do. You collect items, you get the double chunk chocolate cookie, and you have continual strokes. What about the Silent Hill vibes? Where does that come into play? There are various points throughout the game where all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the foreboding music starts to play. It can be incredibly jarring. Like this, for instance, going from this area to this area. You get your first taste of this in the very first level of the game, which is Pooh's Dream. 1 minute, you're in this happy-go-lucky candy land.
Could he do to remove this rather sticky mess?
And then you enter into this house. Am I still playing the same game? Most of the levels, though, throughout the game are the typical whimsy, dream, happy-go-lucky stuff you'd expect from a Winnie the Pooh video game. But there are two dream levels in particular that absolutely do stick out. The first one here is Owl's Dream. There are quite a few cases here of the foreboding music being used. But along with that, the actual theme of this level definitely leans more towards the creepy. Like, this exact clip looks like it should be from a survival horror PlayStation 2 game, but we've used some mod magic to change the character model to Piglet. But the one that stands out the most is, without a doubt, and to no one's surprise, Eeyore's Dream. This stage takes on this graveyard-type castle level where the objective here is to track down the colors and restore them. Eeyore's quite literally lost the color, which, you know, go figure, within his dream. This provides a very airy, spooky castle-type environment, which is very a la Resident Evil. And it's incredibly jarring having this colorful cartoon pig exploring a place like this. That airy, foreboding music plays throughout the majority of this entire stage. But it's not only the airy level music or the theme of the level itself. The sound design of the effects for the enemies has also been developed with the intention of invoking uneasiness. And on top of all of that, this game uses fixed camera angles, which survival horror games for the time were absolutely famous for. And because of all of these vibes added up, this specific cutscene from Owl's level has been compared heavily to one of the cutscenes from Silent Hill 2. I mean, look, it's basically the same thing. This is a Silent Hill game. Even to the point where Silent Hill Piglet fan arts are a thing. I also need to point out the creepy looking Eeyore textures that can be found on these chairs. They actually look like they've been ripped straight from a Winnie the Pooh creepypasta. So while it does make sense for this almost survival horror theme to be here, given that Piglet is literally diving into the dreams of his friends, it is incredibly jarring to see this type of execution from a Disney game. And that's hence why this game has gone completely viral. But one of the best aspects of this game going viral is actually prompting the game director of Piglet's big game to provide 2 sheets of the actual design document explaining why they decided to go for these specific themes. Pascal explains the game is a horror comedy aimed at children. The goal is not to frighten them, but to make them feel uneasy, to give them just the right amount of chills so that they don't feel entirely at ease. Under no circumstances should they be scared by showing them terrifying images. Instead, a more subtle approach should be used to make them feel uneasy, like incorporating unsettling sounds. And the choice of sounds is certainly the scary aspect of the game. So personally speaking, if I had come across that texture of Eeyore as a kid, that along with the music would have been a wombo combo of I can't sleep for the next coming months. What's even cooler about this whole thing is the actual game inspirations and references that Doki Denki used for this game. Luigi's Mansion is the main reference for the style and, most of all, for the game's tone, which means comedy in a horror cartoon context. Resident Evil is the second reference, not in the gory aspect, but rather in the game's mechanical aspect. To resume, Piglet is a kind of cartoon Resident Evil dealt with in a comic way. What an absolute way to explain your Disney video game. Holy sh**. If the devs had decided to go for a completely typical Winnie the Pooh type video game with no references of Luigi's Mansion, Resident Evil, or using sounds to provoke the feeling of uneasiness within children, then there's absolutely no way we'd be talking about this game right now. But because of that decision, 21 years later, after the game's release, it goes viral. So that about sums up Piglet's big game. Honestly, this is one of my favorite 2024 memes. Drawing strings from Winnie the Pooh into Silent Hill, Resident Evil, and Luigi's Mansion is the most batshit insane thing ever, and I love it. Thank you guys so much for tuning into today's video. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave me a little like-a-roo. Also make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you know when content drops. A big thank you to my wonderful Turkey-tastic patrons. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and we'll talk real soon.